Hey guys, so you're going to really enjoy this YouTube video. In this video, I'm going to be discussing some interesting stuff that I found out about pro level DJs. As you know, one of the things I'm trying to do at the moment is trying to grow my DJ profile, so to speak. So I'm trying to get a management company, and I want to try and get some records I've made signed to major labels and stuff. And in this video, what I'm going to be discussing is some of the interesting stuff about becoming a pro DJ that I didn't realize before speaking to major music managers. For example, a lot of the top DJs on the planet don't actually make their own music. So this is something that's really interesting. Now, what I'm going to be showing you is a clip from a coaching call that I do with some private students every single week, where I teach people how to make pro level music. And I just want to say before we get into this video, if at any point during this you're like, whoa, this is so interesting, I'd love to be involved in these weekly coaching calls, and I'd love to have access with me so you can ask me questions and get feedback on your music and let me teach you how to make pro level music, then there's a link underneath this video, and it's just edmcoaching.com. I've got some free video stuff there you can go and check out that'll teach you how to get into music production, and at the end of that training you can book a call to speak to me. And if you're a good fit, you can join the EDM coaching program. Anyway, without further ado, let's check out this discussion. I've been in communication with a lot of music managers, right? Because even though I don't necessarily believe you need a record label to get huge amounts of exposure, which is what you want, right? Because we have to go through the process here, right? Which is, what we all want is ultra main stage, right? The big festivals. We all want this, right? So the stages are this. Okay, so the stages are, you want to get to a point where you're making awesome music. Like your music that you can put on and you can pretty much play to the vast majority of people out there would go, that could be played on the radio and I would not think anything of it. That's step number one. That's a bit of a tricky one. That's why we're all here. We're going to get you to that stage. That stage is definitely going to happen. Once you get to this stage, you then want to go down the route of remixing tracks, right? Why would you remix a track? Well, because a lot of people, when you start out, aren't typing in Phil Harris remixes. Because when I didn't have any followers, no one knew who I was. Why would anybody type that in? It's not just going to guess. So then what I ended up doing is doing a lot of remixes and stuff like that, and trying to get exposure and people who were listening to my music as I was remixing music. And I've done other things, and I've kind of built up this kind of online presence now. And so I'm now at this point, right, where I've kind of got an online presence. I'm making kind of professional sounding music. I'm thinking, well, how do I now get to that next step? And the answer is, the next step is, I want to be seen as a bigger DJ than I currently am, as more of an actual producer. So in order to start getting onto the club scene and getting into festivals and stuff like that, these people will say, what record labels have you released your music on? It's that's one of the first questions they say. It's I can go to them and go, look, I've got 100,000 followers on Instagram. That's more than this guy, and this guy's playing festivals. It's they go, so what? Where's your music released? Which is kind of a bummer, really, isn't it? So now my next thing is okay, well, let's just get this whole record label thing done. And I'm in communications with this music manager. And I'm telling you this because I think you guys would find this interesting. And so what they've said to me is, we need to now forget the remixes, because a record label cannot sign a remix because they don't have the rights to it. So you now have to go and make a ton of original music, right? So now I'm making a ton of original music. Once I've got enough original music, you then present a record label, not just with your music. It's so layered, this, and I'm learning stuff now, and I will end up making this a part of the course at one point, but I need to really do it. I've got to do it first before I can teach this. The thing with a record label is they get pitched 200 to 300 tracks every single day, every single record label. This record label is a business, right? They're not there to help you or me. They're there to make as much money as possible, right? And you have to understand this. So this submitting your tracks randomly to a record label doesn't work, because what they've got is the guys at the top of the record label are not listening to 200 songs a day. Like, oh, click on, listen to this, listen to this, listen to this. They've got someone right at the bottom who's kind of just going through 500 tracks a day. Click, 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 15 seconds of the track next, 15 seconds of the track next. It's so depressing, right? Because it's like, what? 15 seconds? You're going to listen to 15 seconds on my track? How about 4 weeks into that, you know, which is kind of annoying, right? But this is kind of the way it works, so I've been told. So what you've got to do is you've got to do what I'm doing, which is where you get in touch with people who know people, and then you kind of build a bit of a relationship. I will be teaching you all this once I've done it, but you build, and this is what I'm doing at the moment. Then you build a body of music. Like I'm literally talking like 8 tracks, like a ton of tracks, and they got to be very, very good tracks. Then you present the record label with a pitch. The pitch isn't just, oh, here's the music, listen to it, please. It's, this person has built an online presence. This person has a following. This person is also making awesome music. This person is also this. And you pitch it. It's like pitching anything. It's like Dragon's Den or Shark's Tank. It's literally that, right? And then they go and do it. But here's the awesome thing. And this is the bit that actually kind of depressed me and blew my mind. But it made so much sense when the guy said it to me. He said, once you have, because a record label is not going to release one of your tracks. They're not just going to go, hey, we like that track, we're going to release it. What they say is like, if we release it, you are now one of our artists. If you get onto Defected, which is a tech house label, you are now a Defected artist. When Defected do tours, you will be on that tour with them, right? You've got a hell of a higher chance of being on that tour because you're supported by them. So they put a lot into the people whose songs they pitch. Now go back to what I said at the beginning, right? Which is record labels are a business, and they do not survive on people submitting tracks. They survive because if they need more tracks to release, they go to their artists who already exist and they go, we need another track. Can we have another track off you? We need to keep pushing this now, you know, like if you're going to be on the next Defected tour, you've got to be regularly releasing music with us. And you begin to see how this whole thing works, but it's kind of fascinating, right? Because I didn't think of it like this. Now, this is the thing, the guys who I've been speaking to, and they both, there's 3 people I'm speaking to, but 2 of them I'm kind of speaking to more than others. And they both said the same thing, which kind of blew my mind. They said, you have to release like 3 songs, like 1 song that they love and a follow-up 2 releases that they know in 2 months that song's being released, and in 2 months that song's being released, and they'll really push you at that point. And then like that's when things get really exciting. That's what I would consider the big domino. It's like, okay, you've got a song signed by a big record label, things will now start moving, right? To a point that if these tracks do well and you make it into Beatports and it's like, okay, other DJs are now playing these tracks, they then are supporting you. And at that point, you cannot be bad. You cannot send them a track that's subpar and not very good because it's just not going to fly. And this guy said this to me, and I think he was saying it to see where my head was at. He was like, so he said, in most cases, you will not even be the person making the music. Now that blew my mind. Doesn't that freak you out a bit? And he was like, how many people do you follow on Instagram who are DJs? I was like, tons. Like I follow every DJ that could possibly exist. And he was like, great. And he was like, how long does it take you to make a track? I was like, 2-3 weeks. He was like, right. So you spend a lot of time in the studio, right? I was like, yeah. He was like, how often do you see Timmy Trumpet posting himself in the studio? How often do you see Fisher in the studio? Have you ever seen Fisher in the studio? I was like, no. He was like, okay. And he started listing a ton. Now, obviously, there are some artists I do see in the studio, right? Like I see James Hype in the studio. He posts it a lot, him in the studio. But he was like, if you are following an artist who is regularly releasing music and you are never seeing them doing studio time, they are not making their own music. And that blew my mind because I never see, there's like literally 3 or 4 artists I can think of who I see in the studio. It's like Skrillex, it's like Chris Lake, it's like James Hype, You ever seen Tita Lau in the studio? Yeah, when she's with James Hype. You know, it's like, but she's releasing music all the time. Now, does this blow anybody else's mind? He was like, once you've actually made it and you've made a couple of tracks, they're bringing people in to do this stuff for you. And he's like, it's not like you don't have a say. He said, you still have a say, but you're not just you anymore. You're now a business. You're now part of a team. You're submitting tracks. You're not doing your own mixing and mastering anymore. You've got another person who's jumping in and doing bits and bobs. So it's like this weird, convoluted journey he's explaining to me, it kind of like is really awesome, really scary, and really kind of demoralizing, and then kind of exciting at the same time. It's like, whoa, what? So as soon as you become a somebody, all this team of people are pushing you. He's like, yeah. He's like, you've got these top artists on the planet. They're making millions and millions and millions, and hundreds of people are making huge livings off the back of them. And you think just them are standing in front of a computer by themselves, hoping their next track is going to be good when they're paying 25 people's salaries? He's like, it doesn't work like that. It's a business. So it's kind of interesting and kind of weird. And I said to him, I was like, why don't I just pay somebody to do it now then? He said, well, you can if you've got like 100K to spare. I'm like, oh, okay. So this is the interesting thing, you know, like if you take someone like Fisher, for example, right now, I've never, ever seen him in the studio ever. And I also know that Chris Lake does make some of his tracks for him. Does Fisher know how to make a single track? I don't know. He might just be a person who they just said, this guy is a great DJ. He's a big character. Let's push this guy because he can be huge. And everybody, including me, who's in this industry, making music on a daily basis and DJing constantly, go, yeah, I really like Fisher. You know, I don't even question it. It was only until he said the other day, he was like, have you ever seen him make music? Have you ever seen him talk about music? Find one tutorial of him on YouTube talking about music. John Summit, for example, you can go on YouTube and type in John Summit in the studio, and there's videos of John Summit showing you how to make his tracks. But there are huge artists who you will not find a single thing. You go and find Chuck Fisher in the studio, you won't. So this is kind of interesting, right? So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because I don't know whether this is true or not. This is what they've told me, so I would suspect it was true. And the second thing I'm telling you is that it's kind of exciting in a weird way, but it does just mean until we all get to this point, we have to just follow this now. We have to get to that point, unless you've got tons of money and you can get somebody to go and write you a hit. But then now I've said that, that also makes sense, right? Like that does make sense. Every single person on this line, if you were a multi-millionaire, go and employ the top ghost producers on the planet to make you an absolute banger. Get them to make you 5 and then send them off to a record label and say you made them. You'll make it, right? It's like obvious. Now I've said it, right? But he was like, oh, you know, so the way you got to do it is you make this music. We then present them with this pitch. Like it's not just, you almost like forget about the music. This is the guy. This is the guy, right? Or girl or whatever, right? And this is the reasons why. So this is the process everybody has to go through. You get good at making music. Step 1, your music has to sound good. It has to sound really good. Step number 2, you then start doing remixes and stuff like that. Into remix competitions. You start to build up your online presence. And I know some of you are probably thinking, oh, I don't want to have to do that. But unfortunately, it is part of it these days, building up that social online presence. So people are kind of watching you. You know, they're kind of going, I'm kind of interested in this guy. You've got fans, right? And when you go to the businesses on these record labels, and you're kind of not just presenting your music, you're saying, here's a ton of very, very good music. And this person's music has been supported by these people. And this person has got this much followers on Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, all the platforms. And here's what we present with you. And they might still say no. But at that point, you just keep doing it. You keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And you keep doing all this stuff. And it will just, I have a 100% belief it will just happen. And I believe this for all of you, and I believe this for myself. I wouldn't be here teaching this stuff and telling you all this unless I believed 100% to my core that this is doable. And so do I think this is doable for me and you? 100%. And like, I will just, and this is the attitude you all need to adapt. I will do this over and over and over and over, and I will not stop until I get this, right? And that's the attitude you have to take. It's like these steps I'm telling you is just it. So get your music sounding good. Get a good 8 songs that all sound freaking fantastic. That's like step 1. And by the way, and if it doesn't work, you do it again and do it again. So it really is like a numbers game at this point. And that's why a lot of these things, like following a formula, making sure your music sounds the same, and you've got to sound to yourself. And, you know, like once you've got that sound and that formula, you've made that one song, you're like, I really like this. Just make a ton more that are very, very similar to it, right? I mean, even if they sound weirdly similar, just do it, because when you present it, you want to sound like an artist. Yeah, so I mean, I don't really have a specific point to tell you on this one, but I want to tell you this stuff because this is stuff that I'm finding out at the moment, and I find it very interesting. It's like, whoa, wow, that's really how it works, and it's just interesting. I mean, do you guys find this interesting? I mean, you're still hanging around here, right, watching me, so I'm guessing you do find this interesting. Give me some thumbs up if you're like, this is interesting. Has anybody's minds been blown? Like, have any of you seen Fisher in the studio? Have any of you seen Timmy Trumpet? I mean, Ryan, you're Timmy Trumpet's biggest fan. I don't want to poo-poo Timmy Trumpet too, because I think he's awesome too, but I haven't seen it.
I actually know the answer to this. I've just put it in the chat. So other than in COVID, because he's got a studio at home and he had nothing else to do with his time, he spends no longer than an hour on his track. He will send his team an idea. So he'll go, and whatever, he'll send that off.
What, he'll sing that?
It all together. Yeah, he'll send them. You know, like how you and I talk on WhatsApp.
Yeah,
that's what he does. He sends a WhatsApp voice note to them with just literally that. They'll put something together, send it to him,
right,
and then he tweaks it in Ableton and makes it his own, and then they mix it and master it. I know that because I asked him.
So that's exactly it, right? We will get to we'll get to a point where our music production.
He said the important thing for him. He said the important thing for him is because he plays the trumpet over it, it has to build to whatever he's going to play. So that's why he does that. He said he knows people that don't do any of it, but he said I make it so that everything pulls away and it builds the tension for me to actually play something over the top of it. But he doesn't.
Sorry, carry on.
He doesn't always play the same thing over the top of it. So at different shows, he'll play different things. That's why he's as involved as he is, because he wants it to build to one of potentially 5 things he has in his head.
Right.
But other than that, he does nothing.
It's still fascinating though, right? Because I mean, there we go. You know, and this is how the guy explained it to me as well. He said, you don't have nothing to do with it. He said, you just become like a senior producer, and producer, not like this, but just like you just oversee it. I like that one. I don't like that one. That's my sound. That one's not. That I love that idea, but I'm going to tweak that. And then once you've done your little bit of tweaking, which like Ryan just said, it's like an hour in the studio, because I could tweak a melody in 2 seconds. And then it's like, right, straight off to the mixing, straight off to the mastering. Guys who have been doing this 40 years, we're going to make that sound like epic. And it's like, boom, it's done. You know, you are a business. Timmy Trumpet will do 1 to maybe, even 2 a day. I mean, if any of you have seen the Avicii documentary, right? These guys are doing 2 shows a day, 1 in Ibiza, 1 in Vegas, another festival the next day, back over to Vegas, and they're getting 250K for every gig they're doing. Avicii is not a one-man band. He's a huge business making millions and millions and millions. And even in the documentary, even with Avicii, because I think Avicii is another one of these guys who did make a lot of his own music, kind of all the way through. Even if you see him, he's in the studio with 5 other people, right? It's like, even if he was the main guy, there's a lot of other people there doing it. And imagine how easy it would be if you were making music now and you had 5 other professional producers and instrumentalists with you, because that's how big a deal you are now. Then think how easy it is to come up with a song. I could come out like, I often think this when I make music myself. I can come out with an idea in 10 minutes. Like I can sing an idea into my phone, or I can go on Splice and get like a little loop and go, oh, I'm going to change that loop around a little bit. And that idea is like that. And then 95% of the time is tweaking and building and mixing and mastering, making it all sound good and making it sound right and referencing, you know. But here's the thing. I also believe this, okay, just in case any of you are like slightly demoralized by this, don't be. I think it's superb that I have this knowledge that you will all have soon, because say when we make it, and they go, great, okay, cool. So we've got you booked in a studio slot with Martin Garrix next week, okay? Now, if that was to happen, think how much you'd crap yourself if you secretly didn't have a clue about music, and you had to walk into that studio with Martin Garrix and go, just so you know, I didn't make the music, I bought it. You know, it's like, and then suddenly you've lost the respect of Martin Garrix. And now you might think, oh, who cares? And just don't go in the studio with Martin Garrix. But I'm like, I like the thought that if they said, right, Phil, you're in the studio with Calvin Harris next week, a big collab with him. I go, cool. I have 100% confidence to walk in that room because I can bring stuff to the table. I've got ideas. I know what I'm doing. And so I'm happy with that, and that's great. That's power as well, right there. It's like, whoa, this guy really knows what he's talking about, and so it's good. And also, let's face it as well. This is another critical thing that we haven't discussed this is fun. Like, we actually enjoy doing this. Like, there's great satisfaction from coming up with an idea and making music. And like that moment where you make a track and you go, well, this sounds awesome. It's really good fun. I enjoy making music. So again, I don't want this stuff I told you to in any way demoralize you. I'm just telling you it from a point, and I'll continue making music. Like, for years I've said if I won the lottery, I would just build a really big fancy studio and I'd sit and I make music all day, right? I don't say if I won the lottery, I'd buy a festival and make sure I was the headliner, which if I won 150 million would be very easy for me to do. Oh, I'm just going to hire the fields where they do cream fields for a couple of mil. I'm going to hire a load of artists in for a couple of mil. I'll probably at least draw even on ticket sales, but I'll just make sure I'm headlining the event. If I had 150 million, that's not hard for me to do that. But that's not the thing I'd say I'd do if I won 150 million. The thing I say I'd do is I'd sit and make music all day. So that really is, in essence, what this is all about. But I wanted to just share that with you anyway.